All right, gentlemen, we are live. We'll take a moment real quick. I'm Scott Craig with KeyDigital, and I am the National Sales Manager for the Northern region, and I'll let everybody drop their own little shameless plug and introduction. And obviously, we have the famous Mike Tinsberg with us today on Unlocking AV with Mike T. So we'll jump right into it. I don't know if Dave or Tim wants to jump in there and do their little intro themselves.
Sure. My name is Tim Albright. I'm from avnation.tv. We're a podcasting and blogging company that covers mainly the commercial and residential side of the AV industry.
I'm Dave Silkin, CEO of Digital Sales Group and DSG Distributors in Long Island. It's nice to see you all.
Nice to see you.
Absolutely.
Mike Tinsberg, President and CEO of KeyDigital Systems. We're manufacturers of video, AV, pro and professional and consumer AV products.
Perfect. Well, good morning, everyone here. So real quick, we're still good here. So Mike came with one of the ideas here to do a little discussion on the, excuse me. Hold on one second. Technical difficulty on my end. So today's topic, anybody can jump in on the conversation, go through, make comments. I'm going to kind of be monitoring it, but we were going back and forth and discussing the use of compression TV distribution. So I know there's a couple people that have some opinions they'd like to express on this. But one more setting here real quick, because it sounds like we're a little hot on the broadcast. Okay. We should be good to go. So you want to jump in, Mike, and drop your little opinion on this, or you just kind of want to freeform this?
I actually, I saw the evolution of this technology now for many, many years, starting essentially probably in 1987, when we were working on developing the ATSC standard. And then we switched from, there was an analog fight, and then after we showed that we can do digital transmission, it became a digital fight. And then we were we were testing candidates for compression for the ATSC, and I was part of that. Sarnoff, ourselves, basically two companies, and we invited some French and Dutch and German and AT&T to submit candidates for compression, and we were testing various candidates, and some of them were doing really well, some of them were doing really poor, some were doing really well on some scenes, really poor on other scenes, other had reversed really well on the scenes that the other one doing really poor, and not vice versa. One compression format that really was average well on all. It was not great, the greatest, but was not the poorest either. It was very consistent at that time, was MPEG 2. MPEG 2 showed sort of similar results almost on any scene. So we set out for discussion, and one thing popped out then in '87 that we looked at each other and I said, listen, this is digital compression. It doesn't matter which media will it go on. It can fly on air, on cable, on satellite, on recorded media. Anyway, it is just a stream. And I think we'll be better off if we choose a well-behaved format, meaning that behaves well, rounded well on every possible image that's thrown into it. That's how we proposed to use MPEG 2 at that time. So even then, it clearly, I still remember that thought, even it was more than, what, 30 years ago. I was thinking to myself, my God, what a can of worms are we opening here? It will be unbelievable. I thought the imagination ran wild. What industry will do with this? Because it's like opening, I mean, before it used to be television for cable. It has certain format. And television for air, another format. It was a television for the disc, a third one. A television for tape, fourth. Everything was a different format. Everything was not really the same with quality. And when you jump from one to another, you lose. Always, because you decode, encode, decode, encode. And with this, if this is the same compression that can be carried everywhere, that means it's transparent. I mean, if you can jump as many times, as long as you not lose a bit, you show the same picture in the end. So that was sort of struck me at that time. And it took a long time until, not long, but reasonable long time, couple of decades until it became a reality. And now we can see this compression is now absolutely solid part of the whole, video distribution world, and it's everywhere. And the compression didn't stay still. MPEG-2, H.264, H.265, and right now we're part of so-called MPAI. This is artificial intelligence, motion picture artificial intelligence format that's being discussed now between experts. Will be a program next step where images will be compressed because the power of the compression engines are going exponentially up nonstop. You can throw more and more work at this. Now, it looks like in the next decade or maybe next 5 years that artificial intelligence will kick in as part of the compression scheme, which is unbelievable, what it has. It gives me, once more, it gives me sort of my hair on my back stands up just thinking about it. So I want to know your guys' opinion. What do you see in your fields, and how do you see this happen? What do you see are how people are using it? Do they know? Do the end user actually know what's going in front of his eyes? What's happening?
No, I would argue that the end users don't know. And if you're doing it right, they shouldn't know, quite frankly. I'll go back to what Avix has been pounding on the drum for a number of years, and that's the experience, right? If they don't see artifacts, let's say, right, or the trails that happens in motion video when you go in and out of compression, they quite frankly shouldn't know. But if sometimes, when, you're working in a situation where it's good enough video, right, just like good enough audio of that conversation from 30 years ago that we're still having, just for the record. Sometimes it might be one of these situations where it's good, better, best, right? And you're putting in a system that is sufficient for that use case, whether that use case is a video wall like behind Dave, or it's high end, medical imaging that you have to see detail, right? You have to really come down to the experience that the customer needs to have and what they're looking to achieve.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the end user has a clue what goes on. I think a lot of times even we don't know, we don't really understand how much it takes to get this done. And, companies like KeyDigital have made it a lot easier for us to move signal all around the house or all around the building or all around the neighborhood, or small village. But it's mind-blowing that where we've come from to where we are now, and it looks like we're just scratching the surface. So where does it end? And like you say, we sell a lot of different things, as Scott knows. So one of the things that we sell is cameras, security cameras, and we started with a 480i camera, and now we're at 8 megapixel and 10
is at the front door.
Pixel and 16 megapixel. And, at some point, there's a point of diminishing returns depending on what you're using it for. Like Tim said, in the medical, for a medical device, they're looking at stuff that the naked eye can't even see. So you need the demand for that. But if you're watching an 85-inch TV how far do you have to push that? I'm sitting right now, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 feet away from an 85-inch TV that's giving me a suntan. And I can see that the makeup artist was a little drunk this morning when she was working on the host of the show that's on the screen. And that signal is coming from across the street via a fiber cable. And it looks amazing. And
what does it pass it through?
we're just streaming it. We're streaming it. I have my servers across the street in the warehouse. We have a fiber link between the offices.
You're always very happy.
Sorry, Mike?
The audio is, Scott, do you hear anything? The audio is garbled.
Yeah, it's a little garbled on your end too, Mike. I'm not sure if it's your end and your signal.
I can hear, something happening as well. Okay, let me switch to different.
It's the best thing about a live broadcast, but I'm going to agree with Tim and Dave. I don't think the general consumer has a clue about how that's getting from A to B. So it's kind of interesting. And then as Mike started bringing up the AI portion of this, which is extremely intriguing of what route that potentially could go. But, what we've come from and, simple analogy between what comes into your house now between a piece of fiber or coax or something like that. It's like, hey, at what point do we stop compressing that information and what's going to give? It's like we have our, your internet, your TV. I wound up getting rid of regular TV. I stream everything now just because of the overall quality. So
we're certainly seeing more and more of that as we work with about 400 different local installers, and we design and help them, assist them in designing a lot of it. And I always ask, what's the TV sources? And less and less cable boxes. Let's just put it that way.
Well, and I don't know that we will stop compressing, to be completely honest about it.
Because, how could you?
Because human beings in general have a tendency to go, oh, you're giving me the ability to do 4K now. Okay, great. Now I want to do 8, right? Or now I want to do 16. You're expanding the capability, you're expanding the capacity, but I want to exceed the capacity just because that's what we do. Right. I know that regardless of which technology you're talking about, when you're talking about AV over IP, most of them right now are still saying, well, we can do 4K in some way, shape, or form. And 4K uncompressed, just to remind everybody, is somewhere between 16 and a half and 18 gigs. Right. Well, that's great. So you figured out how to do, 4K. Great. Awesome. Groovy. What about 8? Right. And so we're already having that conversation, regardless of whether it's with the display manufacturers who are already giving us 8K displays, or it's the content manufacturers who are already producing some of the stuff that the cameras are doing are 16. Right. So we're always pushing. Right. We're already always pushing against the envelope and the constraints that these folks put on us. So I think that, what Mike was talking about earlier was with the compression algorithms, quite frankly, the last 30 years. Those are just going to get better. But I don't think that we might eventually, when my grandkids get around, stop compressing. But I don't think that any of us, 4 of us, are going to stop compressing.
No, we don't. And some people who, for example, say that, we now have a very big switch, like we have 10 gig switch, now we can compress less. Yeah, it's true, but this 10 gig switch will cost 10 times more, number one. Number two, if you want to make a big system like 40 encoders, 40 decoders, it's going to be unbelievably hard to create a 40 by 40 using 10 gig streams. So that's on a professional level. But if you go down the consumer level, 4 of us are sitting now in front of cameras. This is H.265 signal, right? We jump into the Wi-Fi somewhere, which may not be that good. And before we connect all of this, the streams, even with the perfect backbone and with tera gig of second that running around the US, your actual connection to that stream could be 2 megabits per second, realistically, consistently. So if you don't have a really robust compression that can give you an amazing picture at, let's say, 0.5 megabit per second, you screwed. Because this is going to break out. It's not going to good. So all of us sitting at home, especially during the pandemic, and now after pandemic, I'm sure we'll use it, very intensively because it saves money, it saves trips. It's also clean, and it gives us instant communication. We're going to use a lot. So compression is really, really important for making connectivity stable and solid. The lower bit rate you use, the more solid, more stable that communication is. That's why compression always going to be, good compression always going to be used. There's no question about it. And that's why the work never stops on compressing. So far, the compression was, I would call, dumb. Dumb meaning the compression engines would analyze the picture. They will analyze the texture. They will not connect the dots. They will not know this is an eye or a nose or mouth or a finger or anything. They just see difference in brights, different in levels, different color. They will encode it, try to remove redundancy, first slice on intraframe. Then they will analyze frame to frame, and they say how much that specific patch of picture moved and where it moved, and it will transmit a motion vector. So you don't really have to transmit that patch to the next frame. So this is holy grail of H.265, is how to transmit the changes so the bit rate could be lower. And H.265 halved the bandwidth of H.264, and H.264 halved the bandwidth of MPEG-2, all just basically doing in the same way. And but still, demand is unbelievable. Sometimes I meet people who says, okay, don't worry, Mike, the fiber will be everywhere, the bandwidth will be crazy, you don't have to worry about anything. Guess what? More bandwidth we have, more people using it, and still there's not enough. It's still, the demand is more than supply. So the compression still makes it possible or not. Still, it's a key of the technology.
I joke around between all of like Tim said before, 4K, 8K, and we're just kind of going from there. But as we increase more and more, I kind of use the analogy that we're taking the Hoover Dam now and trying to drain that with a garden hose. So we have all this information there, and it's such a simple analogy. People are like, well, I never thought about that. We have this massive amount of information, but we need to scrunch that to be able to trickle this through the garden hose out to everybody.
Well, and the other thing about that is some of the technology, and I'm not going to say who's doing what, some of the technology to get that compression down there, they're discarding swaths of information. Yeah. And I'm not saying that they're doing it, just kind of willy-nilly. They are making conscious choices here, but they are getting rid of an awful lot of information. And my concern is, as we move towards more and more compression, what are we getting rid of? Right. And what is that information going to do to us in the long run? Is it going to eliminate stuff like EDID? Right. Is that going to be kind of go by the wayside and eliminate the ability to really kind of produce the correct resolution? Are we getting rid of color sampling? What is it that we're actually sacrificing here to get 4K and 8K down, 1 gig pipelines?
That's a good point, because two different ways you can look at this. Like, even going back further, I have a teenage daughter, and she's heard vinyl before, and she's heard the same song on an MP3 format or anything like that. So we can even take it further back to the audio portion. She's like, hey, what did they do here? You know what I mean? So you have all that warmth, everything else in vinyl, and now they're just go through. And like you said, Tim, they're pulling little bits and pieces out of it to be able to compress this format into, an MP3. So I'm with you.
No. There is no, actually, compression engine is designed to retain as much information that you recognize as useful as possible. It's not designed to don't show you something. It designed, for example, if there is a pixel that has brightness of 100, and then the next pixel is brightness of 120, what's transmitted is 20. First transmitted is 100. The next transmission is 20, not 120. So it takes less bandwidth to transmit 20 than 120. But you still see 100 pixel and 120 pixel. They exactly the same as before. The only difference is if pixels that transmit 100 is lost during transmission, guess what? 2 pixels are lost now, not 1. So the highly transmission data is more vulnerable for breakdown. So if breaks down could be fatal, like the total frame will be lost if something key information. So you can have tremendous blockiness, of total craziness. You sometimes see it on TV these days, where motion vectors are moving improper blocks, giving improper brightness and contrast, because some key elements from which this build up have been lost during transmission. But it's not the transmission engine, compression engine is, its goal is not to cover up some data. It's just squeeze as much as useful data for you into the into the given narrow channel. Then there is another thing that's going on. For example, in a sophisticated engines like H.265, there's predictive loops, meaning there's a compression engine that works on an encoder, and that compression engine compresses picture. Then there is a decoder that's an encoder that decodes this and compares this with the original image. And then it sees a difference, and that difference is transmitted in the channel. So what happened is that the system tries to compensate for all the encoding artifacts. This done for the expense of time mostly, not quality of the picture, meaning the resultant picture is later than it's actually happened because it takes all this time to process all these frames. So H.265 could be half a second later than real time because it takes 30, 40 frames to actually transmit all this block of data before it could be reconstituted on the other end. So the trade-offs here is less of the picture quality, but more on the time and sometimes motion. What they do is also say, okay, we don't have enough bandwidth, we're going to start dropping frames. So you go from 60 frame to 30 frame to 10 frame to 5 frame to 2 frame, and the motion becomes jerkier and jerkier. This is also considered to be a sort of allowable trade-off in the movie industry, starting with 24 frame per second film that was originally severely truncated motion representation of reality, 24 frames per second. So all of this, it's very interesting, but it's not fighting. It's actually fighting to present you the best quality for the bandwidth given, the best possible quality.
So we're running into a lot of confusion on the integrator side, on the end user side, and even amongst ourselves about 8K and pre-wiring houses. And there's a lot of disinformation out there. And I think it's because, a lot of us don't understand, well, not all Mike Tinsbergs, unfortunately. And I've been trying to do the Vulcan mind meld on them, but it's not working. And, there's lots of battles going on over 8K and copper. And should I be pre-wiring a house with copper if I want to distribute 8K through my house? Now, what we were told was copper you can never get the speed through copper to pass 8K, which I guess is 48 megabits, although I don't know that it's been, Tim, you may know if that's been actually certified or not, and it goes up to 18s. Now some copper is going up to 24 megabits. But so what, is there a right answer? Do we know? Is 8K ever going to really be able to be passed through copper, or everybody just be running fiber in the house now?
So there are some folks that are actually pushing, they're pushing 100, they're testing 100 gig over copper. When I say testing, that means that the IEEE are doing some tests. It's in the lab. This is not for production, right? So what I would say is it's possible. It's certainly possible. Question is when and what's the expense, right? Is it going to be one of these cases where in 2 or 3 years, yeah, sure, they may come up with it, But at that point, fiber then becomes the cost-effective,
Right.
the cost-effective infrastructure, which I'm chuckling because 10 years ago it wasn't. That was the one that was expensive, right?
Yeah.
If you really wanted, you really needed high-end bandwidth, or you really needed to push things, distance-wise, you bit the bullet and you paid for fiber, but you're paying for fiber, right? That was the expensive one, and it may end up coming back to where fiber is the cost-effective method by which we push higher bandwidths.
Yeah. I mean, we're reps. We rep a couple dozen lines. We're distributors. We distribute 600 lines. So you try to pick the most information that you can out of each talks like this, and we try to read a lot. But there's sometimes where you feel like you get backed into a corner because you don't want to give somebody misinformation. I mean, we still have guys calling us for Cat 6E. And I'm like, there's no Cat 6E. It's Cat 6A or Cat 6. No, Cat 6E. It's more bandwidth. And I'm like, Cat 6 is 550. Cat 6A is 750. I don't know where the E fits in, but I deal with a lot of wire vendors, and there's one that was calling it Cat 6E, but it was Cat 6. So just simple things like that, our industry kind of like erodes itself. Knowledge-wise, and it would be nice if we all met in the middle and found a standard and everybody agreed to this, and maybe we kind of caught up to where we are now because we're always chasing it. We just started getting enough 4K material and being able to distribute 4K nice. Now they're pushing 8K. And everybody knows that the TV is just really converting 8K, from, and sometimes you're converting 1080p from a cable box to 8K. So can you really call it 8K?
You just hit it. You just hit it right there, Dave. So think about what TVs can do now
And I'm
compared
asking
to what yeah. So like what a TV can do now via processor. I mean, we all know, like tons of my friends will run out, they buy that 4K TV, and I'm like, what are you fueling it with? They're like, oh, my whatever,
Time Warner box.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just not just saying names. And I'm like, hey, do you know what that box outputs? And they're like, no. And then you tell them the truth. And it's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, your TV's doing the work. I was like, hey, how can they make a TV look so bright? How can they make it look so dark? I was like, they have control over all those little pixels. It can say, hey, here's the darkest dark, here's the brightest bright, and go from there. So it's like, at what point do we find a compromise in the middle, Mike? And I'm not trying to argue with you, but the transmission of it, get that compression or artificial compression, and let the TV. So if you could have half and half, maybe we could get some type of actual 8K. I mean, still I joke around with my friends, a little 13-inch black and white TV on a terrestrial antenna. Nothing ever beats that picture. It's like, wow, look at the depth of that picture. My friends are like, you're crazy. I was like, no. I was like, we're now playing mind games and fooling the eye to what it needs to see. So it's, I have a different view on it. I'm not going to argue with Mike. Mike is my boss. But I get it.
No, it's not. First of all, the OLED is really awesome picture.
It is. It's beautiful.
OLED has blacks that CRT was not able to get. So forget about CRT. Go to OLED. OLED is the one. But about the compression, about the answer a question, Dave. I think copper will stay where it is now exactly. So I'll tell you why. Because 18G, when you have 18G transmission now over copper, we use compression. It's by a factor of 1.8 because copper handles 10G pretty nicely.
Yeah.
But after 10G, we compress by a factor of 2. It's very small compression ratio. Compression factor of 2 is lossless. You can't see anything. You can't see any problems. So that is the way 18G is transmitted. The 48G will transmit the same way. By the way, 48G standard 2.1 now has compression as a part of the standard. Okay, so that means the same copper at 10G will be used, but it will use by compression factor of 5, not factor of 2. Still, factor of 5 is nothing because JPEG 2000, that's 40-year-old standard, used a compression factor of 10. Okay, and that was a sort of a standard, and it was really good. It was very little problems any place whoever said. So, and that's inter-frame without using frame redundancy, so there's no delays. So factor of 5. The only question is, can it be done cost effectively? And the answer is yes. Now silicon is become cheaper and cheaper, and having compression factor of 5, even built in inside cable heads, is almost no brainer. Okay, this will happen. So I think copper will stay. If you want to pre-wire hires for 8K, I think it's very safe to have a few copper cables there, and the extenders will come along to allow this. And the thing is that what's happening in industry is that, yeah, if the decoder, like Apple TV, if Apple TV is integrated inside a TV set, you don't need a high-speed port because all you need is an internet access.
Right.
Then Apple TV decodes it, and the 48G supplied inside TV set, and it's not a difficult thing to do. However, as you know, the industry is never going to be homogeneous, all marching in the same order. There's always going to be people who do different things. So now Apple or Google or others always have external streamers. That's why the 48G, 18G, and 48G will be a needed format, especially for commercial setup when people need to have decoders in a rack and displays in different places and audio management and all the other things. So my opinion is that 48G will be also, copper will be used 48G the same way as 18G is used, but with higher compression. And the compression is the way it's done now. 48G transmitted over 10G link will be indistinguishable from original 48G. It's just no problem. As far as technology goes, it's no problem.
See, I want to hit on one thing, non-topic related. Like a monitor is a monitor to me. Dave has an LED wall behind him. It's those panels. They should, like, I always believed in outboard. You know what I mean? So an outboard streamer or anything like that, it's like, hey, why take away from a monitor? Now it's working even harder. To be able to do more things other than, hey, you just need to display a picture. So hopefully maybe we'll come back around to that and just have a monitor, and you'll have all your outboard compression and everything else coming in. But, the audio industry, we're all living it. What today is today, tomorrow's tomorrow.
It's consumer will buy packed TVs. They may never use it, but they buy a Roku, Apple, blah, 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 blah TVs. Then installer comes and puts everything separate because easier for him, but they already sold. It's marketing. They sold in this packed TVs. But in commercial installs, we don't need that. Commercial installs better to have as good TV as you can, monitor, just a monitor, and put everything in controllable and manageable from your point of view on the side, and do it that way.
It's like the DVD VCR combo. When one of those things broke, you only had a TV left.
Right. So, and fiber, for example, we're now making, we're going to put soon 8K cables out. So what happened is that we'll put short cables like up to 9 feet, which is pure copper, and then we'll have fiber cables that go up to 100 meters, 300 feet on 8K. So that's doable certainly through non-compressed means. Copper going longer than, let's say, 6 feet or 9 feet uncompressed on 48 gig is very, very hard. It's almost, you need to start using compression. So if you want to save money and uncompressed, in an uncompressed connectivity, you have to short copper. But that doesn't mean that 48 gig extenders won't pop out real soon. And I don't think it's a problem. It's just no demand right now. The demand is very low. The 8K TV is just starting. The content is not there yet and will be there for some time. The streamers are not streaming at that resolution yet. So, it's kind of a starting point, but it will kick in at some point because display sizes go higher and higher. And at 75-inch, you may appreciate 8K, 4K or 8K if it's correct content, because you're going to see every detail of that picture. So it's a matter of size.
And the size also is when you get into those higher resolutions, you need those bigger sizes to see that detail, right?
Right.
There's no point in putting 8K on a 30-inch TV. There just isn't, right? I mean, but people do, right? I mean, I've seen 4K displays that are sub 50-inch, and you just sit there and shake your head and go, what?
Why?
Like, why? And it's at a premium too. You look at, let's say a 42-inch, by a I almost said standard definition HD, but a 1080, signal versus a 4K and 4K or UHD, whichever one. But they're selling that at a premium of sometimes $200 or $300 extra dollars just because it says 4K on it right now. And there's no benefit to that, right? The consumer, the person actually consuming the content there, is not getting the full resolution.
There's no benefit to it.
No.
But
And
why the consumers are always sold on pixel quantities? I don't understand. There's far more to the picture than pixel quantities.
All the marketing people.
Yeah. Keeping up with the Joneses, But yeah, you see 40-inch 4K HDR TV, and I'm like, wait a minute. A 40-inch? I was like, we all know here that we can put them side by side, a 32 and a 40, or 1080p. You can't see it. It's all marketing.
Yeah, we've gotten calls for some 32-inch 4K TVs, and they're out there. You can find them, but you can buy a 50-inch cheaper.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
A 4K. It's amazing. This was a specific medical practice that was looking for higher resolution small monitors. So in that case, it made sense. But somebody called, they wanted to put one in the kitchen, and I was like, why are you doing it? Well, what do you have in your kitchen? They said, I have a 1080p 26-inch Sharp that I've had since I worked at Key Distribution, which became Avid 20 some odd years ago. I still have the thing. It looks great. It looks great.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to change it until smoke coming out of the thing.
yeah.
You just get it. You're just attached to it, Dave. And
I'm just cheap, Mike. I don't want to buy anything.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, what is your take with the whole entire 8K realm of cabling? Right now, as far as I'm aware, unless there's some other things out there, PS5 is kind of taking that realm with the 8K aspect.
Yeah.
So I don't know what cable comes in the box. I don't know anybody has a PS5 yet. I mean, I'm obviously dying to test this to see what it is. But what is your personal take on the whole 8 cable realm now?
Well, the thing of it is going to be difficult, at least in the short term, because you are going to run into a situation where you're going to have proprietary cables based on the content creators. Let's say the devices that are giving you the content. So whether that it is a higher end Blu-ray player, if they get to that point, or it is the PS5 or some other content device, they're going to have some sort of cabling that is proprietary, or the highest end HDMI, and those runs are going to be very short. So you're looking at sub 3 meters. If you need to go beyond that, which in most residential they do, because they're either in a rack somewhere or they're hidden or something, where it makes it aesthetically pleasing, you're going to have to get into a custom made compression, back to that again, or you're not going to be able to do what you want to do with the device. So then you're looking at mounting it somewhere in close proximity to the switcher and the matrix that you're using, and that right there gets to another whole issue, is whether or not your switcher can handle 4K and 8K.
What do you guys see happened with this with pandemic in the field? I went recently to Best Buy, just walked by the aisles, and I see this huge 75-inch like stacked everywhere in the walkways, really cheap. Is that means that the demand is high and people buying TVs? What's going on?
Or stereo receivers. You can't find them in most retailers.
Yeah, no, we haven't seen we sell Pioneer Elite, and we haven't seen one since February. And we're probably not going to see one until next February, we were told. So that's been interesting. But video is in very high demand. screen sizes are getting bigger, whether you're doing a dedicated theater or you're doing, you know, a basic living room or a dining room, or then screen sizes have certainly increased exponentially. We used to, our average movie screen, projection screen, used to be about 119 inches. We used to stock a lot of them. I don't think I sell anything below a 150 anymore.
Oh.
And this week alone, I think we've spec'd probably a half a dozen 175-inch screens or bigger. You know, there used to be a kind of a rule about, you know, sitting close, how far you were sitting away from the screen, size of the screen, out the door. You know, now it's like, I want the screen to be the size of the wall.
Wow.
You know, I don't care if I'm 6 feet away from it. So on the theater side, which is, we've seen the biggest growth in our history in the last 6 months in custom theaters. We do demos here because we built the theater for our dealers to come to, because most of our dealers don't have showrooms, and we're doing 3, 4, 5 demos a day, and the demand has been incredible on it. And you know, I'm not in the TV business per se. We leave that to the big national distributors, but we sell tons, as you guys know, of ballons and brackets, cables. And we are selling more ballons and brackets and cables than we've ever sold in our lives. So there's guys putting in lots of televisions. I think people are putting them in every room. And, you know, multi-purpose rooms now, because they want connectivity. They want to be able to stream their laptop to the TV. They want to be able to have the games going through their TV. They want to be able to have all their Apple devices and everything else going on. So that COVID, you know, has been a lot of things. It's been pretty good for the video business.
I would just kind of dovetail off of that. It's the residential market right now that is the hot component, right? Folks aren't going on vacation. They're not doing, you know, regardless of whether you have a second home or not, they are investing in the home that they've got, right? And so in addition to home theaters, but they're also investing in the home office, and they're expanding that. Right. And that's where some of those are going, Mike, is the fact that, you know, you are now, you know, you are at home working in the den or in the actual space at your office, but you're doing video calls all day. Well, instead of looking at just your laptop all day, let's go out and get a big screen TV to actually do that with. And a number of folks and integrators, both residential and commercial, are figuring this new kind of morphed weird middle ground out, which is the office, right? It's commercial, but it's at somebody's house. So both sides are you know, they're both in new areas, whether it's the commercial integrator who is now suddenly in someone's home, or it's the residential dealer who is suddenly, you know, putting in what would have been, you know, a year ago considered commercial AV.
Yeah, and you know, it's in line with the real estate market, which is also out here on Long Island. Inventory is thin. You know, we're stuck in between the Hamptons and Manhattan, and we've just seen a parade of people going east. And builders are buying tremendous lots of land and building houses that used to be spec houses, but they can't even get them to be spec houses because they're pre-sold already. You know, it's before the first nail goes in. These guys are just selling things off paper now. It's really interesting, you know, and people want to move into the house. They don't want to first start thinking about their technology, you know. So we're meeting with a lot of builders now, and builders are more interested in what's going on, and they're coming in with their local AV guys, and they're saying, all right, instead of how cheap can I do this to sell this house, you know, what do I need to get everything done? Because, you know, I want to walk in here, flip a switch, have his office ready, have the theater ready, have everything done. So we've seen of that, you know, just throw a Cat 5 in every room and then we'll call it a day. You know, now it's, we want to be wired for everything.
Yeah, the tables have definitely changed. Instead of, you know, the AV guy having to get in there before they picked out the granite countertops, it's been a reversal. So it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to be here. Like where I'm located in the shore area of Jersey, I've seen a mass influx of all the people leaving the city. So houses literally will come out on the market, 48 hours gone. People are going through. A couple of my friends that are realtors, they're actually buying these sight unseen. They're like, hey, that's the price. if we go through a pandemic, I don't want to get stuck in the city. I don't want to be, go out on my little patio or porch or whatever. So this has completely changed everything. But I'm with you, Dave. Like the residential part has increased for me. Guys are like, hey, your PTZ cam, someone wants to do a laptop. They're making home offices, more media and entertainment at home, or even outdoors too. I mean, here it's starting to get a little bit cold, but my other guys further over where it's still warm, they're like, psh, like try to find an outdoor TV. That's another thing, People
Outdoor
like,
TVs or outdoor subwoofers. Anyway.
yeah,
So,
I think a lot of this happened when, in the beginning, when they did the lockdown, and then they deemed us essential, and everybody went, essential? What, are you kidding me? And then everybody started calling, going, hey, my Wi-Fi's not working. Hey, I need a TV.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you guys are essential. We went from like, kind of like, oh, who needs those guys to, I need my AV guy, I need my AV guy, I need my AV guy, I need it now. So it was in the perception of end users and builders and consumers, we went from kind of like the shady, crazy Eddie guys to, the firemen of electronics, putting out the fire so that, the kids don't kill each other and they can play games in their own rooms and everything is streaming fine and dad could still work. It's pretty on.
it's amazing because before
Looking at us like this when this is all over.
yeah, right.
We don't want to be the forgotten ones.
Yeah.
Before pandemic, I spoke to dealers, said, what's going on? They said, are you installing home theaters? And some dealers tell me, Mike, all they want is a good Wi-Fi, and they walk around with their iOS devices or smartphone tablets or laptops, and they don't need anything else.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Dave, it's changed. People staying at home for a long period of time, even young people want to have big screens. They get sick of the small screens.
Yeah. And that's
Can't go to the movies.
That's one of the reasons we built the showrooms that we did, was because they were saying that and listening to their earbuds because they hadn't experienced anything else, especially the younger generation. But
Right.
we get a family in here and we'll do on Saturdays and Sundays or nights. And we encourage dealers to bring their customers or just send their customers and bring the family. We had a really nice family in here on Sunday, the mom, the dad, grandparents, the dog, and two of the kids, when they came in, we COVID sprayed the room and everybody was wearing their masks. And I said, all right, so I'm going to let you guys pick out a movie and you can watch as much of it as you want. And I'm going to leave the room now. So they picked out a movie and I was sitting out here where I am now with one of the dealers. He kept looking at his watch and going, wow, they're really getting into this, huh? And they literally watched all of Mulan and came out and said, this was the greatest experience. We want that in our house. And they've never seen it before. So we expose everybody to this. I mean, now is our time. The more we expose it to this, the longer.
So what happened in commercial world? I mean, it's all died out. There's no more conference rooms. There's no more huddle
I
rooms.
know for us in the commercial world, it's just everything got put on hold. There's still a demand for it if they can reopen or if they're going to reopen. I think a lot of companies got tired of paying $25, $35, $40 a square foot or more in Manhattan when they can leave their employees at home.
Yeah.
Pay for their Verizon, whatever their Wi-Fi is, cuts down on their commute, cuts down on their overhead. And I see a lot of that stuff changing. I mean, how about you, Tim? What do you see? You're more on the tune.
So it depends geographically, right? I mean, certainly in the New York, New Jersey area, you've got that. In San Francisco, you've got the starts of that. Although depending on what happens with some of the big tech firms, they may or may not come back. Right now, they're looking at third quarter of 21. Other places, though, they are slowly getting back. And something to Mike's point is that, a year ago, we were still all kind of, making the huddle rooms. Those were the big hot topic. They're converting them now, right? The dealers that we're talking to, those are being converted into hoteling spaces. The hybrid work model is certainly going to be what's happening in the next 2 years. And so those huddle rooms will suddenly become, rooms that the folks that don't work in the office every day, but come in 2 or 3 days a week, that's what they check out, right? That's where you go to plug in your laptop and ramp up your VoIP phone right there. and you use that for the day that you're in there. The conference rooms, though, they still happen, right? You still need to have a boardroom. You still need to do, meetings and collaboration for the next 6 months to a year. That'll have to be done safely. So a 10-person conference room is now a 5-person conference room for the purposes of collaboration. And there has to be some sort of video portion in there as well. And so the dealers, the commercial dealers that are worth their salt are still getting jobs. They are, getting there, though, requires a couple extra steps, including a PPE program where you have to demonstrate exactly what your what your employees are doing before they get to the job site, as they get to the job site, and when they leave, your procedures to get the job and to get the contract secured.
It's funny that there is this hybrid. We sold some systems that go into hospitals for it's AV over IP. The nurse is basically monitors a bunch of patients remote. I mean, without stepping into their rooms, she has video audio conference. It's not Zoom because you cannot make internet-based systems. There has to be locked out, has to be internal. And so we use AV over IP to facilitate that. So it's commercial, but it's still individual for each user, like patient-nurse communication. And we recently sold another one into the court. We were surprised. The court wanted to have the same thing. So they still wanted to do a session in the building, but they don't want to sit in the same room. So they are both AV over IP system that we sold, customized for them with software and hardware and everything without no need for programming. It's all sort of self-guiding. And plaintiff, judge, lawyer, they all have a real-time conversation through AV over IP, but it's not in person and it's not remote. And it's some kind of a hybrid, safe way of doing this kind of meetings. It's maybe that's what's going to be more and more used in the workplace. Sort of. For example, I'm owning this company, and a lot of people work from homes, and I found that, in some cases it's fine. The software engineer working from home is very productive. Actually, he's more productive than working at the office because he has to go to the office, then go back from the office, with his car. And so he loses 2 hours a day that he actually spends programming, and his product is easily delivered to any point, testing and stuff like this. So he works fine. But of course, warehouse manager cannot work from home, so he has to be there all the time. And so there are different engineers can do both. They can work from home, but at some point they have to come back and test and do verifications. So also hybrid model. So the workplace is definitely changing, and it's going. What do you guys think? It goes into this hybrid model. Half home, half at work. Depends on what you need, and sort of doing the best you can in that circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say to kind of go with Mike, like the commercial stuff has been fully customizing. So it's kind of like some of my commercial dealers are very niche-y now, or a completely customized solution versus the residential just kind of going from there. But I don't know. It seems like more with COVID and everything else. Now everything is becoming in person. That interaction has gone away. So commercial came on the other day, and I was amazed. It's like you don't even have to leave your house now to buy a car. You could buy the car and they drop it off. The whole part of the fun of buying a car is the interaction of it. So it's weird.
I also found
this
out.
Whole.
Yeah, I also found out that meeting somebody in the office mask to mask is actually less efficient than on Zoom because I can see the face. Yeah. I cannot see the face mask to mask.
You can't see the reaction.
I cannot hear what he's saying either.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Well, it's definitely made everybody look at the way they do business differently. And it may be for the best over long term. I think companies will be more efficient. I think my company will be more efficient. I I think we can do a better job now, not knowing what we know, than we could a year ago. And when things get straightened out, and hopefully they will sooner rather than later, I think we're still going to see the demand for technology because, you know, we're going to see companies making changes on the run that they're going to need our guys. And, you know, it's a good time, really good time to sharpen up on your network skills.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
You know, network security. One of my nephews was just graduated, and he's like, you know, I don't think I took the right major, and I don't know what to do. And he went and he took a couple of network security classes, and he goes, "Yeah, this is where I'm going to be from now on." You know, and I think within a couple of days of his graduation, he was making more money than he would have ever made, you know, doing what he thought he was going to do when he got out of college.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
yeah. Because even as an IT guy, my one neighbor across the street just does remote support. You know, he goes, I stand by my cell phone, something happens, poof, you know, and then just kind of go from there.
Yeah.
But one thing I know we're going on almost an hour here, but I know we got off topic, but everything just kind of revolves around and wraps back up. So I definitely want to thank both of you guys for taking the time. I was super excited that Tim said he could join us. I was a big fan of Tim, and I love Tim's voice. So that's
Well, thank
why
you, sir.
when I was talking to Mike, I was like, "Let's get Tim on," you know. And Dave, me and Dave go back years, so it's a huge industry, but a tight knit industry. But again, thank you guys for your time today. This was huge. I know we jumped around off topic a little bit, but it's just like COVID.
great.
What's happening today might not happen tomorrow, so we got to be jumping around.
Amen, brother.
Gotta be
Thank you for your time, guys. It was really exciting. Thank you.
Always good to see you, Mike.
Thank you
Good to
guys.
see you. And I know
Hopefully,
Dave,
we'll get some bases out and we'll do a little jamming. It's hard to do over Zoom though.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Absolutely. But we can do jamming with a mask, right?
That
Yeah, we've been playing a little on Friday nights. We're back in the studio.
Nice.
That's one thing that has been amazing me. Some of these musicians that can't go out and interact, some of the collaborations remotely, Zoom calls, everything else. There's been some amazing people getting together and jamming just via Zoom and things
We
like
did
that.
that
I'm
thing
just
for
like,
Cedia, and it was the way it came together. You were talking about, I think there's 10 of us, 10 different musicians in 5 different time zones, in some in different countries. And
By
somehow,
the way,
magically, it all came together.
yeah,
You
it's,
know,
Yeah,
it was wild.
I spoke to some professionals. I love jazz, and I have a lot of friends in the Jazz Lincoln Center. I used to attend the club there a lot, and have a network of people. And I asked them, do they collaborate remote? They said there's a big problem with delay because of the small delay, even a few hundred milliseconds. It's really hard for them to do, especially in jazz, where you don't play from prescribed sheet and you have to interact real time. It's very hard for them to create good music on this. So this where compression really hurts. So I suggested to him maybe they should collaborate like in AV over IP, almost real-time environment where delay is almost non-existent, where they're in the same big room, but they don't touch each other, but they still hear each other. And they're actually doing that. Seems to be a way to create really good music, but seems to be it's very hard for them to do Zoom playing.
yeah, and you don't want to do that via Wi-Fi. That's got to be a hardline connection with the delay between all that.
Right.
But it's amazing how to see everybody adapt, And one thing that I thought of, Dave, the other day is the tree lighting. I don't see how they're actually, and this is completely off topic, sorry, but you guys are still on here, how they're actually going to do that. The amount of people that gather in the city to see the tree, see the lighting of the tree, but you can't all be together. So there's another monument, like a huge historic item that's going to be, hey, sorry guys,
Yeah.
12 people at a time. You can book an appointment. How are they going to do this? This is crazy.
People behavior is highly disappointed. I mean, people went now traveling, millions of people on Thanksgiving after they were on the news day and night don't do it, like nobody cares.
Yeah.
And people dying and nobody cares.
Yeah.
I heard from somebody that news works this way, that when you have one death, it's really crazy, everybody is upset. But when you have thousands of deaths every day, all of a sudden nobody cares. How does it work this way? I don't understand.
It's crazy.
I think
Again, I know
that's something we'll never figure out.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It was
It's
amazing.
great seeing you guys, and thanks for
Good
having
seeing
me.
you guys.
Hopefully we can get it again together.
Thank you guys again.
Person would be nice.
Yeah.